All right.
Three.
On set. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Elders at the Gate, the show that doesn't matter. We're just doing this for our marketing, for our individual companies. But we're glad you're here.
I'm your co-host, Manuel, with Atlas Marketing, and this is Hunter Scott.
With Strata Cloud Accountants.
And I guess I should say my last name too, Barajas.
Yeah. Anyways, I got some marketing questions for you.
All right.
Manuel.
All right.
As a fractional CMO,
Mm-hmm.
Chief Marketing Officer,
Mm-hmm.
should a small business choose a niche? So think about it from me.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a small service-based accounting firm.
Yeah.
We've grown off of referrals all the
Mhm.
way up to this point, and it's now time to choose a direction, be a little more intentional with our marketing. Should we choose a niche?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, in terms of just in general, whether you choose a niche or not, the question comes to, or I guess it all comes down to: does your solution provide value to a wide range of customers, or is it better suited for a small niche, like you would say, right? A targeted audience. So if you can differentiate yourself enough within a target audience where they're gonna see you as like, no, that's the people you use. You don't use anybody else, right? Then I would say go niche. It's gonna be a smaller piece of the pie. You're gonna always have a smaller market share, right?
Right.
But if you can do well with a niche, if you can do well of like, you communicate with these people, we know their industry, we know their needs, we know their fears, their aspirations, all of that.
Right.
Then you're better off doing that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be harder to scale that, to a larger,
Right.
business, but it can be done. And then you can later on do different things, right?
How far have you seen that scale before? Like, is there a certain, at this point, you kind of struggle to move past that? Or
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell you like specific numbers because I think it really depends on the type of product or service you have.
Yeah.
But what I've seen is like people who start out as a very niche offering will then start to offer other services or other products to try and like get more of a piece of the pie with the same either audience or market they have,
right.
or maybe now it's a new territory. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at, like, for example, Nike, right? Who started making running shoes. That was like their niche.
Right.
We're gonna make running shoes. Well, after a while, it's like we don't want to just make running shoes. We want to make basketball shoes. We want to make, swim gear. We want to make just sweaters and sweats for people that play sports or people that want to feel athletic. All these things come, but they didn't start out with, we're just going to make, all sorts of sports clothing.
Right.
They start out with a very niche thing, and they got famous for that. So can it be done? Yes, but you eventually start to have to add on things, right?
Yeah. And does that niche, I know it could be either one, but in terms of like how easy it is to market, can that niche be, does it have to be an industry, or can it just be like a size of company, or like maybe some other qualifier?
Yeah, so that's I think that's a great question. So again, you're trying to find the niche based on the service or product. So another way to say that is you're trying to find a niche for the solution you have. So who is this solution best suited for?
Right.
It may be that like the common denominator for that solution is the size of the company. And it can be manufacturing, it can be a restaurant, it can be a photographer, whatever. It's the size of revenue that they're bringing in specifically, like for you, right? Or it could be that the common denominator is the amount of employees that they have, right? It could be that their cost of goods, whatever it is, you have to find that, and then you can develop a strategy around that niche or that solution that you're providing for
Right.
people. Does that make sense?
Got it. So for us,
Mhm.
one thing that we give a lot of advice on is managing inventory. So a good niche for us is anybody who has some sort of element of inventory.
Mhm.
How would you go about marketing to that?
Yeah. One thing I've seen, especially with when it comes to niche, is like the more dialed in, the more specific you can get to your type of customer,
Right.
and the more you can understand their not just their demographics but their psychographics. So Seth Godin has a really good book. He's like one of the kind of marketing kind of authorities right now.
Right.
But he talked about the difference between demographics and psychographics. And so to me, psychographics is like the things that will promote action or provoke action in someone, right? What are their fears? What are their aspirations? What are their hopes? What are their, what do they, what do they value? You know what I mean?
That's psychographics.
That would be psychographics, because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can still have this as a common element. It doesn't matter what part of the neighborhood or demographic you fall into, your skin color, your race. None of that matters with the psychographics. It's all internal, right? Where demographics are like how much money you make, where do you live, right? What kind of job do you have? But all of those, people can share different psychographics within that. Okay.
Right.
So based on that, you want to create an avatar and be as specific as possible. Sabri Suli has a great book called Sell Like Crazy, and he talks about making like an avatar of your ideal client, and basically like even going through like what does their day look like, right? What does Sally's day look like, who works at the manufacturing company, and she's she's currently the head financial person, but is looking for a fractional CFO to help out with their services. Okay, well, what does her day look like? Where does she spend attention? What kind of food does she eat? Does she go out to restaurants? All these things, and getting very specific. And it may seem like that's a horrible idea.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it does.
that thing is like driving me nuts right now. But but it's actually not. It's you're trying to understand every little thing about the way they act.
Yeah.
And you're going to use psychology in the long run for this. Okay.
Right.
Why is that important? Well, like I talk about like having the right message at the right time to the right audience, right?
Right.
So now you understand the right audience. So what is the right message for this person, right? How are you going to get her to be interested in your services? Nobody likes to be sold, but people like to be helped. Right. And so good marketing will be you helping someone with the problem they have without them feeling like you're selling them something.
Yeah.
Right. And so this goes into like, people are really big right now into like privacy policies. I don't want to get ads from people. No, you do. You just don't want to get the wrong ads. Right. I'm telling you, if you have like a skin rash that you haven't been able to figure out, but your Google results, and there's a pharmacy that knows like, I know exactly what that is, and this is what they need. And you get an ad like that says, hey, this specific type of rash, this is the solution, and here's why. You'd probably be relieved that you didn't have to go spend money and go to the doctor. Okay. Yeah. Well, there's something very similar that happens in business, right? But these people are real people. And so sometimes we try to reach them at their office. Right. While they're sitting in front of a computer working.
Let's see what you're saying.
When you may need to reach them while they're at home.
Yeah.
Or you may need to reach them while they're on their lunch break, wherever you know their attention is. Right. And you need to like say, hey, you have this problem and I have this solution.
Yeah.
Right.
So how would you go about creating that avatar? Like, how do you figure out?
Yeah, you just have to. Most of it you have to use your imagination.
Yeah.
But you have to be specific, and it has to make sense for what the person you're dealing with. So you have you do have to find some common elements with your clients. Right. Okay, what do I know about John, who's my best client? And you'll get to know these people by conversations over the phone, meetings, all that stuff. Ask them about their personal life. What'd you do this weekend?
Yeah.
Like, you need to get insight on your customers, right?
Yeah.
This is why Facebook was so big, because it was giving you insights on, like, hey, this person checked into here, 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 here. So
Right.
these are the common things that these type of people like to do. Well, you can do that with your top clients, and you can just ask them questions. Be curious about their life.
Right.
Are you married? Do you have kids? Where do you live?
Right.
You know, are your kids going to private school?
Yeah.
Right. And you can do it in a way that's not like
Creepy.
weird or creepy,
Yeah.
but just in conversation, share with them some of your stuff, and then let them share with you some of their things. Hey, what's going on? Like, anything new happening? You know,
Yeah.
find out what's keeping them up at night. You know,
Right.
hey, what's a problem to your business right now that you need the most help in? Let's see if we can use finances or financial, tools to help you with that problem. But it all has to do with helping people, and the better you get at helping people with their problems, the more valuable you'll become to that customer. And if you can learn to do that well with like a specific niche or a specific type of problem, then whenever that problem arises, you can say, this is your problem, this is why I know it's your problem, this is a solution, and this is why it's the solution.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So, okay, so let's say my avatar or client is a family-owned restaurant that is, doing okay, surviving, but they want to do better, and they want to expand in other locations. And, I find out that this person, I find out the details of their life or whatever.
Yeah.
How do I then begin to, reach them? Like, where would you start?
Yeah, so if you're talking about it just someone in general out there and it's not your current client, you have to understand why they want to start a new restaurant. Why do you want to open a new location? Is it more revenue?
Yeah.
Okay. And as a finance person, it's like, will a new location be the best path to more revenue? Right?
Yeah.
What is the goal? Is the goal more revenue? Okay. If you increase your rates or your prices actually by just 8%, you actually will increase your revenue at the same amount as if you opened up 2 locations and now have to worry about the cost of hiring someone to manage that location and this location. You know what I mean? So you'll know these things, and you'll have to walk someone through that. So sometimes speaking to people on what are their aspirations, right, and sharing with them specific anecdotes or case studies or whatever is going to help them see you as someone they can trust.
Yeah.
So if you can share hey, a lot of times I'll get restaurant owners who have a successful location and they're looking now to scale that up or increase their revenue by opening up a second location. Here are 3 things that you should know if this is what you're looking to do. Or here's 3 things to look out for if this is you.
Right.
1, and then you blah 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 blah. 2,
Right.
da, 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 da. And then you can do that. And so understanding they're like, wait, that is me. I do want to scale up my business. I do have a successful location. I have been thinking about it. Now I want to know what he knows that I need to know in order for me before I open up the second location.
Right. So creating video content.
Creating video content is a great way. This is why again, having a good avatar is good, because you're like, okay, well, but why do they want to increase revenue? I mean, get super the why. We do that a lot in marketing. Why? And then working your way, reverse engineering that to something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Your business is based a lot on trust, right?
Right.
I mean, when you allow an accountant to work for you, you're basically giving them access to all your business finances, which is the most intimate part of a business. Right? It's people are okay with knowing your mission statement. You can know my mission, my values, all that stuff.
Right.
But when it comes to my finances, I just stay out.
Yeah.
And even in marketing, I found that I can work with someone on all the areas of their business, but a lot of times they'll be just stay out of the finance department.
Right.
And it's but we need to know if our marketing is working. It's yeah, I'll tell you if it's working or not.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, they're letting you into the most intimate part of their business.
Right.
And so there's going to be fear.
Yeah.
Right. And so the trust needs to be built.
Right. Got it.
Yeah.
next question.
Yeah.
Here, let me see.
And we're gonna cut this out, but that stupid heater. Should I just turn it off?
I have a feeling you probably won't hear it,
Oh, with the mics? Yeah.
but I don't know. I could be wrong.
Well, we'll figure it out, right?
We'll figure it out.
I mean, this conversation is like a C+ at best.
I think we're doing great.
No, it's a B. It's a B.
I think we're doing great.
Do you want me to ask you some questions?
I have a few more questions that I can ask you.
Okay. Shoot.
All right. So I'm building trust. Right.
Building trust.
We want to build trust, especially
Wait.
for.
Kind of reset it so that we can cut into it.
Okay.
All right.
So you talked about, in order that for a company like mine, a fractional CFO who's going to have access to all your books, that takes a lot of trust, right?
Yeah.
So we need to build trust.
Mm-hmm.
So I forgot the question. One second.
You know what we can do too, Hunter, in the future? Yeah. I think it'd be okay for us to have a notebook and because you may get a question while I'm talking and just jot down a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Or have our questions written out.
That'd be good.
Or statistics or whatever.
Yeah. All right. So, you had mentioned that for a company like mine, we really need to build trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a fractional CFO, we're getting access to all of their financial information and helping guide them on decisions. And so therefore they need to be able to trust us. Even coming into the engagement, they have to trust us.
Yeah.
So question on how to do that from the marketing. I was just talking to somebody yesterday actually about who was kind of telling me oh, you just need to cold call and put out some ads and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Is
that a method that would work for a trust-based service such as mine?
No. So cold calling is not going to build trust.
Right.
Cold calling it'll be effective for the sales. Yeah. You will get sales, but it's not the best method to build trust. Right. Meaning, if I have a board, right, like a music board, right, and I'm trying to increase this particular instrument, which is trust, I wouldn't try to use another lever to increase that instrument. I would find the one that is built for building trust, and trust is built on brand.
Yeah.
So I go into this with companies because that's a very common question I get. It's okay, we're trying to grow. We have limited resources. It's always about limited resources. It's either limited time, limited money, limited staff, whatever it is, right? It's resources that you're limited on. Well, should we focus on social media? Should we focus on Google Ads? Should we focus on cold calling? Should we all these things, right? And they're all trying to grow their revenue.
Right.
There's going to be things that you do that build brand, which builds trust, and there's going to be things that you do that build sales or revenue, and that goes on the advertising side. So I did make a video about the difference between advertising and the difference about branding, and sometimes they can coexist together. And things that you do can do both. They can build brand and serve to move the revenue needle up. But for the most part, cold calling, I say, is a revenue generating task, and it's not a brand building task.
Right.
Okay. First of all, people don't like being reached out to out of the cold. Now that you can do it well, and you can do cold calling in a way that's going to build your revenue, and you can do that well. I've done that before, right. But that's not the best way to do it. So the way to build trust is by serving people.
What do you mean by that? How would I do that online?
So you can serve people online by creating content that helps them without you asking them for anything.
Got it.
Okay. It begins to create this relationship between you and your prospects.
Yeah.
And especially if there's a niche that you're trying to serve, and basically say, I'm here for this for you.
Right.
Right. And I've seen people do it really well within the marketing realm. Like for example, there's designers out there that be like, hey, look, this is how I used to price things. This is how you should be pricing it, and
Right.
based on your experience. So there's like 5 different levels.
Right.
If you're just beginning, you should be pricing here.
Right.
If you're already got some experience and all that stuff, right? Why is that helpful? Well, this person is now being a service to everybody in the industry.
Right.
Now you as a potential client may be like, this person knows what they're talking about.
Right.
And so they can be trusted in that realm.
So that would be how to start, like, on the journey of like trying to become a thought leader.
Yeah.
Just try to create some helpful.
Yeah,
content.
and I've heard people say like, don't try to become an authority or a thought leader necessarily right off the bat, or say that. Just say
Right.
you're an enthusiast. Say you're like a part of the community of
Yeah.
X or whatever or Y,
Mhm.
and this way you're not like coming off as like this arrogant, I'm a thought leader, but
Right.
but you're just trying to serve the community.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're just trying to be a service to them, and recognize that that's a long term strategy for growth.
Yeah.
That's not going to get you clients necessarily today or tomorrow right
Yeah.
away. But it's one of those things that's like, when do you start it? Well, you start it today.
Yeah.
Because 5 years from now, you'll have to start it anyways.
Right.
But you're missing out on the length of time to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So with that in mind, for a company, like us who, we do want to invest in long term, but we also need some clients here over the next year.
Yeah.
What would be, and for any other company out there, what would be the one marketing activity you'd say to start doing today?
The one marketing activity. You need to do video content that both serves, and then you can purpose, like, so that's branding, and then you can purpose it for advertising.
Got it.
Okay. And so this may take a few shots to do, like you may try a few things and it may not work.
Yeah.
And this is like very different for every industry and every type of service. So it's not going to be like, there's no magic pill. You
Right.
have to try some stuff out.
Right.
Right. Is this going to do it? Is this going to do it? Right. And I think solving the problem for people and helping them see that you're the solution is going to be the best way to do that.
Yeah.
So video content is going to be like key for you.
Yeah.
And then also just leveraging your time. Like, where do you go? Where do you, what do you do? Man, even like, it may be good for you to reach out to some like local businesses, like local restaurants. Let's say it's restaurants you want to build relationships with, or manufacturing, whatever, and say, hey, look, I do this for a living. I want to interview you. I want to promote your business, but I also want to just hear from you some of your problems that you're going through as a business, and I want to offer you some free advice. Would you be open to that?
Yeah.
And then just
Why
see
not?
what they say.
Yeah.
People will have an ego. They'll want to be on whatever.
Right.
And then the other thing is they may say yes, and they may become a client, or they may not. But now you have content that you can use of you helping a real restaurant with a real problem. And if another restaurant has that problem and they're tired of trying to fix it on their own, they may just reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you're building brand and you're also advertising at the same time.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And there's going to be a call to action that you're going to have to put at the end.
Right.
Check out more. Follow us.
Right. Right.
And Gary Vee has a book. It's pretty old now. But I think the theory still remains, right? He uses like, jab, 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 like right hook, basically like you give, and then you ask.
Yeah.
Hey, if you have issues with your business or you want some more help, give me a call.
Yeah.
I'd love to help you out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually how I feel like we've gotten a lot of our business with our internal upsells. Giving some free help when we have time to our clients above and beyond the scope, but then also at the end of that, having a little bit of an ask of, hey, why don't we just keep doing this for you? I'll put together, a proposal type thing. And it's gone really well. And every time the client always seems to appreciate it.
Yeah, because remember, you're giving them a solution.
Right.
you're either making them more money or saving them more money than it's costing them.
Right. Right.
And people are going to always say yes to that.
Right.
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 It's rare when they don't.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's like about serving your customer base, your even the people that are not your clients yet, but serving them in a way that they can be like, I know what I get with them.
Yeah.
You know. So.
Yeah. Cool.
Sweet.
Well, another episode at Elders at the Gate.
Yeah. Well, I actually have some questions for you.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So, with finances, you know, I think you and I work like very closely related in a lot of things, right? Like
Yeah.
you want to make sure that the tasks that are being done are helping the customer produce the most profit as possible.
Of course, yeah.
And then what I'm doing is making sure that the tasks that are being done are helping them produce the most amount of revenue possible.
Right. Yeah.
I say that's like
sometimes we don't like each other.
Sometimes we don't like each other, but that's rare.
Yeah.
I think for the most part, a good CMO, a good marketing officer,
Yeah.
and a good financial officer probably see eye to eye for the most part than they don't.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so for like a question for you would be, what are like, in terms of like understanding profitability,
Yeah.
right? At what point do you begin to scale up or add, staff to your business? Let's just assume it's like a one man shop. You know, for like an agency, usually it starts with a one man shop. Very rarely do you start with like an agency with like a full team.
Right.
Right.
Right. So at what point would you make that first hire?
Yeah.
Is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so that's tricky. So one, it all kind of depends on your goals and your personal situation and how much you're taking home and how much you want to take home. What do you mean? What's wrong?
Nothing.
Oh, the microwave.
That's all right. Let's just stop. We'll start recording.
Okay. So, anyways, so that's a little bit of a tricky situation, tricky question, I should say, because it all does depend on your personal goals, how much you as an individual need to take home, what you would like to take home, all of those things. But really, all you need to do is you have to plan. And one thing that you do have to understand when you hire that person is you are going to take a hit, financially. When you hire that person, you're onboarding them, and then you're working on bringing on more revenue to actually support them at the profitability that you want. So here's how I'd go about it, right? I would I would say as a business owner, you should, as a marketing agency owner, at minimum, you should be making $150,000 a year. I would make that as like my first take-home target of like, I need to regularly be making this. And once I'm making this, I'm gonna mentally consider that my break even, and I'm gonna put a plan together so that I don't drop below that before I'm hiring somebody else. So I would start there. Is you're a business owner, you're taking risks, you're busting your butt trying to find new clients. You should get paid for that at a minimum, and you should plan your business around you at least making 150. Now that could be different depending on your stage of life. Maybe somebody is single, doesn't have a family, they're okay with really, pushing it a little bit and doing 100, whatever the case may be. But I would choose like, what's my minimum take home pay, and choose something that it's actually going to be worth your while. Because if you're like, well, I can barely cover my expenses, but I can make do with 40, what's really going to happen is you're just going to end up being bitter as you try to work on your company, and as you pay your employees more than what you're making.
Yeah.
You're just going to end up being mad at them, bitter that you're even choosing to do this, all of that stuff. So I'd start with that.
Okay.
Figure out, what do I want to take home? And then from there, you just have to plan out your cash flow. So what what we track for our clients are kind of 4 key metrics on the financial statements: your revenue, your gross profit, your bottom line profit, and then your net cash flow. So, a little fun accounting saying for you. This is so hard.
All right, we're gonna stop it.
Yeah.
So Hunter, I have some questions for you
Okay.
as a professional CFO.
Yes.
So one thing that I work with a lot of businesses, and even with my agency and the other agency I used to work with, there's always like, when is it okay to operate at a loss? Because that happens in businesses sometimes,
Right.
and especially like I think in the beginning stages. So like, just offer me some perspective on that.
Yeah. So I always go back to the goals of like,
Okay.
what is it that you are trying to accomplish? For most agencies, I would say, I would probably make the argument that it's never okay to operate at a loss. Probably you're not owned by investors who are looking for a certain amount of growth, I'm assuming. And that's probably going to be the case for most agencies. So because you don't have any like outside investors who need that certain like a rapid rate of growth, I think that it's a much more better approach for an agency or a service-based business to focus on profitability, so that you can maximize what you're taking home for your family, so that you can make sure that you're growing at a reasonable rate that you can actually sustain, instead of just trying to grow and not sustain that. Usually people who are operating at a loss, like maybe a startup or something like that, they're trying to hit certain growth metrics so that they can show the investors that this was a viable product to actually invest in, and that there's actually a demand for what I've created here, so that they feel good about it. But I would say that's probably not a great way to approach it for most businesses, especially like a service-based business where it's not like you have to buy a lot of like equipment or anything like that to get started. It's kind of a low barrier of entry type business. So I would actually say probably never good to operate at a loss for an agency, an accounting firm, or most professional service-based businesses.
Okay. So with that, when do you give someone the like advice, like, hey, you should probably like shut this down?
Yeah.
Like, let's say like, okay, so you have a business and they're like, no, we're gonna get it back. We're just
Yeah.
having a slow month or whatever, and they're 3 months, 6 months. I don't know. You tell me. When do you say, hey, I don't think you should really be doing this anymore?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would again go back to the goals of like, why are you doing this? And when the business is at a point of like, it's not only not accomplishing your goals, but it's now tearing down your life, your personal life, relationships with family because you're borrowing money from them or whatever the case may be. When it's actually working against all of those things and you don't really have like a solid plan to turn it around other than, I'm just going to like keep trying to do what I'm doing right now, then probably time to consider like I should shut my business down. So usually what we will tell somebody in that case, and we don't get like too many people who are in that case, but usually it's like, hey, you should start setting some serious milestones of here's what I need to see in 3 months, here's what I need to see in 6 months, and just on a quarter by quarter basis, are you moving the needle of your profitability or cash in the bank or your revenue, whatever the main issue is, are you moving the needle towards the path you need to get back on? And if you're consistently over the 2 or 3 quarters not doing that, then you really need to ask yourself, should I be even doing this? Good just kind of take home metric for that is like, if you went out and got a job and made whatever you would make at that job, are you achieving that at this job, at your business? And if not, is there a path to where you can be here over the next year? And if not, then you need to really consider, like, is this worth doing it?
So you're saying, like, if I'm working as like a BMW mechanic, it's my own business,
Yeah.
but I'm not really making money. There's a lot of cost of like having my own shop and
Yep.
tools, all that stuff. And you're saying if I can go apply to be a BMW mechanic
Yeah.
somewhere and make X amount of dollars, that's like that should be my baseline. Like my business needs to either make this much,
Yeah.
or it's probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Because I there's an easier path to just go do it.
Right.
Because like, right, is that? But what about like people like, yeah, but then you're your own boss, things like that.
Well, sure. There's always other reasons that can factor in of why you want to do this. But I'll actually give you this example. We actually had a mechanic who had an automotive shop and was unable to pay himself. Now when he wasn't paying himself, the business was quote unquote profitable. It was showing a profit, but because he had people to pay, because he had equipment he was purchasing, he was not paying himself at all for multiple months, upwards of even a year. And so it kind of gets to a point of like, yes, you're your own boss. Yes, you have flexibility. But, this individual also had a family. He was also the breadwinner of the family. He's now getting into some issues at home because he's not bringing home anything. His spouse is now getting a little bitter towards the fact that he's even doing this, right? It's now weighing on him more, and so when I say, like, is it starting to destroy your life a little bit? That's kind of what I mean. Is like, could he have accepted less from the business than he could have got somewhere else and been content with that? Sure, maybe, but in this case, this individual, and I think a lot of business owners are in this position where it's like they're not actually making much of anything. They're not able to support themselves. They're not moving towards like what their actual personal goals are and those goals that they made with their spouse of what they want to achieve. And therefore it's spiral, it's going down this spiral downwards of like, I'm starting to, destroy my life, not invest my time wisely. It's kind of where you're starting to get to.
Well, you and I have had some crossover in the way we help clients, in that we both agree that like, what isn't working now won't work at a bigger scale.
Yeah.
And same thing, what works now can work when you scale it up.
Right.
But when you're talking about operating at a deficit, which is essentially what we're talking about,
right,
you run into the same thing. Like you can say, okay, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna white knuckle it.
Right.
But unless you're really changing like some very foundational operations, all that stuff,
yeah,
you're just gonna scale the deficit.
Yes. Yeah.
So you run into that.
Oh, all the time. Yeah, that's everybody's first first solution to the problem in their business is, I just need more revenue. I need more clients. I need to do more. What we talk about a lot is 4 key metrics, and this is pretty universal across all businesses. And those metrics on your financial statements are your revenue, your gross profit, your net profit, and then your net cash flow. So we have this saying in accounting that revenue is ultimately vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is reality. So what it's saying is, everybody wants to go around beating their chest of like, oh, I'm $1 million company. I'm, or more, the bigger the number, the cooler you look. But that revenue doesn't actually really mean anything. You could be bringing home 0 to, your spouse and kids, and you could have a $10 million company. The net profit, that's your sanity. So if you have a profit, you're going to feel sane. I'm able to take something home. I feel good about it.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually making money. And then the cash is the reality, because you could take that profit and you could invest it into equipment or whatever, and still never actually take anything home, to your family. But the cash is reality. So this is like, is this business actually increasing my bank account? Right. And I forgot your original question, but like, Oh, around scaling,
Yeah.
So, we talked about that gross profit,
Yeah.
I actually had this conversation with a marketing agency just the other day around, they were at a break even, and we were talking about what an acceptable net profit would be for them. So that's one of the core metrics there, right?
Yeah.
That's the sanity metric.
Mhm.
What would be a good net profit? Well, they're at zero. They're at a break even. What would be a good net profit would be, a good beginning net profit for a marketing agency would be like 20%
To the bottom line.
to the bottom line.
Mhm.
So what they have to do, the first, then I guess reaction is, okay, well, I just need to get X more amount of clients. And it's like, well, maybe, but what I'm telling you is 20% has to be at the bottom line. So you can go get, 5 more clients, but what that means is your labor costs can't grow with those 5 more clients to be at 20%. If your labor cost has to double in order for you to handle the 5 more clients, then you're still at a break even, and that's, you haven't solved anything. So,
But you're giving yourself more headaches.
but you've given yourself more headaches, more to manage, probably more team members.
Maybe quality goes down.
Maybe quality goes down.
Yeah.
There's more cash flow to manage and
Yeah.
make sure you're having cash in the bank when it needs to be. So you've scaled your revenues successfully, but there's like an issue in your business model somewhere to where you're either not working efficiently, or you're not pricing correctly, or both. There's something in there that isn't correct to get you your profitability, and you got to solve that first. And then the answer still might be, I need more revenue, but at least then when you're getting more revenue, it's gonna actually make you more profitable.
So that brings me to my next question. Typically, because usually people don't look for a CFO when everything's going great.
Right.
If they have a healthy margins, they have healthy net profit, cash flows, all that, they're just like, they're not even thinking. We probably need to hire a new accountant. But you get people when they're looking to change something.
Right.
Typically, when you start working with a company, what's one of the first things that you see that you need to fix as a CFO?
Yeah. Vision. So I'll quote it. I don't have my Bible in front of me, but there's a Bible verse that says, without vision, you cast off restraint.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So most people don't have the vision of what am I even trying to accomplish. Even a successful company, we've worked with companies who are very profitable, but they don't really know. They kind of set some arbitrary business goals, but they don't really have a sense of like, why do I want to achieve that business goal? They just, think, well, I'm supposed to get bigger, so this is what I'm going to do, type of thing. So the first thing is vision. Is we have to establish like what you're actually trying to achieve, and is your business goal in line with your personal goal. So like, for example, somebody might have the personal goal of, hey, I want to build a house for my family over the next 12 months. Well, to do that, to build a house, takes a lot of money up front, that you got to put down. And so you're probably going to need to take a lot of money out of the business if you're a profitable company. But they might also say, but my business goal is to blow up and hire a bunch of people and like scale my revenue and do all these crazy things, which also takes a lot of cash. So what they have is they have two competing goals. So what we have to work with them is like, let's get the vision in line here and align your goals so that the thing you're spending probably most of your day on, your business, actually aligns with the thing you want to achieve personally. Yeah. And you're heading in a direction that you want to head. So the biggest thing is to start with the vision. Once that's kind of established and articulated, or maybe even halfway thought through, a lot of times it takes a long time to really figure out what I'm trying to achieve. Yeah. We start putting budgets together and forecasts for them so that we can see, here's what you should be hitting along the way. And then what we do is we hold them accountable. So we track their financials every single month, and we talk through, are you actually hitting that vision that we set? And we try to hold them accountable to what should be taking place.
So in your experience, most people's problems that they run into is that they lack vision.
Yeah.
Long-term vision.
Yes. Yeah. Most of the time Again, maybe have an idea of a business goal because they heard that on a podcast that this type of company should be doing this, and they've accepted that as their own personal goal, and that's something that's heading them in some direction, but they haven't really thought through or tried to articulate like what am I really trying to accomplish. So like I'll give you an example. Um, let's say construction company. This company right now they niche down in a certain service. Maybe they are like a roofer or something like that, and they're doing roofing and they're somewhat content with that. But they heard on a podcast that they should be like an all-in-one shop and they should really become general contractors. So they set this goal of like, hey, I'm going to be a GM and be able to do all the trades under my house, under my roof. Not necessarily a bad goal, but it's like, but have you thought through what you're trying to achieve personally? Because if what you're trying to achieve personally can be accomplished with just being a roofer and focusing on that specialty, it's going to be a lot easier probably to get to that personal goal by just focusing on one trade, opposed to trying to be a master of everything.
Yeah.
I had one person tell me they wanted to be a billionaire by doing that very thing, trying to be like all trades under one house. But they didn't really want to be a billionaire. They just wanted to have a good lifestyle for their family, which is totally reasonable, but it doesn't take being a billionaire to do that, right?
Right.
So you could have just been a roofer, and you could have, easily been a millionaire by doing that. Very easily. You could have done that over the course of a decade.
Very easily.
Applying, there you go. Very easy. Applying, a decade's worth of time and hard work to a roofing business, you can very easily have the real goal that this person had.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So let's say you have some issues that you're seeing in your profitability.
Yeah.
Like you're not making money. What would be the first steps for that person? Like that, let's say they don't have a CFO.
Yeah.
What would you recommend be the first step they take?
Yeah. First step I would take is probably get a CFO. But assuming how I would go about solving that anyways would be, okay, I don't have profitability. That means really one of two things, or both things, is I'm either spending too much money or I'm not making enough money, meaning I'm not bringing in enough revenue into the door. It really means one of those two things. So I would start with what's easy, which is the cost. It's pretty easy to go through, your QuickBooks or whatever and just get a better understanding of where am I spending money and is this necessary spent? I know for our firm, there's been times where it's like we're spending too much on something as simple as software. And it's like, well, this software, it's cool, it's fancy, it's shiny, but like we don't actually really use it for everything that it's made for. We kind of got ahead of ourselves in buying this really expensive software. So that's a very simple example that so many businesses overspend on, is getting the latest and greatest software. So I would start with your costs. I would start with your cost structure of your revenue. So what I mean that is like the direct costs associated with the revenue you bring in. So for like a marketing agency, that's your people. That's potentially any like specific softwares you need to perform certain services. Things like that. For like a restaurant, that's going to be your food cost. It's going to be your beverage cost.
Labor.
Labor. So I would start with is my margin good? So again, going back to that gross margin, like is that at an acceptable rate for the revenue I am bringing in? So, but once you've kind of solved that, once you've realized, okay, my margin is good for the revenue I am bringing in, and my overhead is not insanely high, it's very reasonable, then it's probably a revenue problem that you have to solve for and have a good marketing guy who can help you solve that. So
because there's two ways you can solve revenue problems. Well, I would say three ways, right? One is reduce your costs.
Yeah.
Right. The other one is increase your pricing.
Yep.
Right, up your pricing, or increase your volume.
Yeah.
So you and I work in a similar way with people like that.
Yeah.
And I think like when it's healthy is like a good thing. We talked about this before, but like a good CFO has a good relationship with the CMO, and vice versa, because it's like we're working towards the same thing, right?
Yes.
It's like you and I, like we need vision to produce what we need to produce. You need
Right.
vision to guide the budgets that are going to help get there and things like that.
Right.
And so, okay,
Yeah.
that's pretty good. Okay, any tips you would give, like, to a company that's starting out, that wants to
Yeah.
grow?
Yeah. Yeah. To a company that's just starting from square one, like it's day one of the company, my biggest tip would probably just be to keep it simple. You know, don't worry about going and spending, a bunch on the latest software or the latest, whatever you think you need. And anytime you do have a gut reaction to spend, really check yourself and like understand, like, is this something I really should be spending on? Is there any other way to do this? Especially if you're bootstrapping your company,
Yeah.
and you don't have excess funds laying around or anything like that.
Yeah.
And especially if you're kind of in an experimental stage where it's like you're really trying to figure out what is my service offering and all of that. If you're coming in with a little bit more of a plan, maybe you have some money saved up, maybe then the approach is get what you need and go sell and get clients and do that. So to a day one company, I'd probably just say that. Just try to keep it as simple as possible. Don't get caught up in, all the shiny objects out there and, and spending a bunch of time on it, and just focus on building your network and getting clients and doing a good job for those clients, and you'll probably be pretty okay.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think I would add, even like, from like my experience with multiple different businesses that I helped with, is, excuse me, with the keep it simple, is like you really have to be aware of,
Yeah.
like, you have to take honest assessment. For me, it's like you're spending. Do I need this? But also like how you're spending your time.
Yes.
Because as an entrepreneur, as a new business owner, as a restaurateur, whatever, right, there are things that are always kind of pulling for your attention.
Right.
And they all seem equally important, but they're not all equally important.
Yeah.
Some of them are going to help you grow your business better, and when leverage, right, will help you.
Yeah.
And some of them are going to be like, I think you talked about like revenue being vanity. I think like the amount of hours you work can be vain, in that like you can work really hard to not really produce anything of value for your business.
Right.
And I think, like, especially like as a service company, right, where it's like, oh, we need a really good website. It's like, do you really need a good website right now?
Yeah. That's actually going to be the one example I was going to give. Is like, especially for a service company, what we often do is we're like, oh, I need to go create a great website, and it needs to detail everything. But the reality is, a lot of times we're making up our service offering as we go. So the website's out of date, almost immediately, because we hear, oh, we figure out like it would be better to do it this way or that way or whatever. So the website's out of date. So it'd almost be better to create just a very simple website so that maybe you have some presence, and just kind of be general on it and simple, and put your face on it so that it's personal at least a little bit, and then
and it's hard because like those are things that are hard to measure, but you just have to really take, like, you have to take it day by day, and you have to recognize. I mean, from personal experience, I've had it where I've spent hours looking at a program to see if it's like going to be the right program for us, when really, like, even if I were to get it and I get the highest premium version of this program, it's like the value that it's going to provide for me and my team is going to be like minimal
Right.
because it's like it's cool, but we don't have those kind of needs yet.
Right.
So then it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, don't spend hours researching this. Just figure out a way to do it on a spreadsheet or do it on a separate on paper if you need to first, and then as you develop a need for it, like then research that.
Yeah, and along with that, I would say be careful who you compare yourself to when you're a young company. So there was one particular instance. I listened to this podcast of this accounting firm that we really admire and we hope to be like one day. And we heard them saying how they had HubSpot as their CRM. And I heard them saying, and when I say we, I mean me and my partners. I heard them saying like how they used HubSpot and they used it for different email campaigns and they tracked all this crazy stuff with it. It sounded awesome. And so I went back to my partners and I was like, hey, we got to get HubSpot. This firm over here is using HubSpot. Yeah. And so we did. We went and we paid for a huge subscription to HubSpot. But it didn't occur to me that, wait a second, that firm is 20 years ahead of us. They have a full-time marketing person who can manage this program. Like it's their full-time job to manage what goes in and out of this program. Yeah. And I have absolutely no time to try to figure out how HubSpot works. And it's not something that I already know. Yeah. So now I'm stuck in some annual subscription, paying $400 or $500 a month for HubSpot. And it's like, I didn't need that, I didn't need that type of organization. One, because I'm not bringing in a huge volume of leads to track anyways. I could have done it on, a spreadsheet or very, very simple CRM instead of paying for that whole thing. So that's another thing I would say is be careful who you compare yourself to, because a lot of times when you're listening to podcasts or reading books or whatever, you're reading people or you're listening to people who are 20 years or decades ahead of you, and they're going through, even though what they say is relatable, they're going through very different problems because their business is 10 times bigger than yours.
Yeah, it's on a whole different level, literally.
It's on a whole different level. Yeah. So that would be another piece of advice.
That's good. Yeah. I like it. I know you had we briefly touched on this, and I don't think it was on camera, but it was before we started recording. But like, do we chase after referrals, or like if you're mainly referrals, how do you grow your business? And I don't know if you wanted to go into that at all.
How do I think we grow our business?
No, I guess you're asking me.
Oh, you want me to ask you?
No, I mean I don't care. I didn't.
Oh yeah. Well, I can speak of it from a cost-effective way. Yeah. Of how I think. Yeah. And how we, we're not like people who help people grow their revenue. That's not what we specialize in. But what I do typically challenge,
I guess your experience with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess speak to that.
Yeah. What we do typically challenge our clients with is like focus on the most, the lowest cost fruit, So like, for example, like a mechanic, we have a mechanic, and his system, what it does is it tracks all types of work that they have quoted, but then whoever was at the counter didn't end up going, through with it that certain day. And so we're talking about how do I, raise my revenue while still lowering my marketing costs, right? Everybody wants to know that. Yeah. And well, a very simple way is like, hey, instead of paying for all these paid ads, have you thought about coming up with the process of targeting all of this work that you have in your system and somehow creating some sort of email campaign or, mail out campaign of how to get back in front of those people and say, hey, like, looks like it's time to get your brakes redone. We suggested that a couple of weeks ago. Why don't you come back in and we'll schedule an appointment or something, Yeah. So focusing on the opportunities that are already within your business and your network, whether that's upselling clients on new services, whether that's, reevaluating your pricing constantly to make sure you're not, for a service-based business, spending so much time that you're earning so little, or whether that's, what is within kind of my already referral type network or upsell type network. That's a much cheaper option than trying to go acquire some client that probably hasn't heard of you yet. So, from a financial CFO standpoint, when I hear people talking about, it is time to raise revenue, because that time does come. It's, hey, let's start with, my suggestion is always, have we thought about starting with the lowest hanging fruit first? Because it is usually the cheapest. And especially for a service-based business, our type firms can usually only handle so many clients at a time anyways coming in the door. So a lot of times focusing on the cheaper avenue of acquiring clients gets us more than we would be able to handle anyways.
Yeah.
Especially as young firms, so that's typically what I try to at least challenge people with and see if they've thought about. And then from there, I refer them over to you to figure out how to do anything.
Yeah, no, I think we're looking at it from a very, very, very similar perspective.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more nuanced than just what you explained. I mean, from the marketing perspective, referrals are a great way to acquire clients.
Right.
Usually the challenge is that there's always this plan yeah, we'll do this, we'll ask them for this, and then they'll just want to send us all their friends and family.
Right.
But they don't.
They don't.
And they don't. And you're like, what?
They don't respond to
they
the
don't,
survey.
Yeah, and they don't respond. And so then what happens is how do you create a process to foster that culture of referring people over? And there's companies that have done a really good job of that.
Yeah.
I think even when when you look at startups, one way of doing it is the only way to use this is if you refer 5 people. That's the only way they'll be able to use it. So you limit them, you can only give this to 5 people. You can make a link for 5 people.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's like, oh man,
I better do it.
But that works when something is in demand.
Yeah.
When it's in high demand.
Yeah.
And so it just you have to be creative. You have to reach those people and you have to build a relationship with them. Yeah. And I think even finding ways to connect with people outside of the meetings is a good way to do it, because to be honest, some of my referrals have come from people that I don't do business with, but I've talked to, connected with outside of the office. Right. And they're like, oh, you should connect with Manuel. Right. They do this. Yeah. Or I help their friend, but their friend is not even the brand ambassador for me, or the fan. It's my friend that's the middleman, Right. And so I think you just have to get a little creative and just remember that these things don't happen overnight. You have to create demand for what you're selling, and the way to do that is to fulfill the problem, solving the solution, or solving the problem by providing the solution. Right.
Yeah. Another thing with just referrals too is it does make it very hard to plan around, because for our firm, for example, we're approaching a point where we've always been referrals, but now we're approaching a point to where we might have to hire the first CFO on our team that's not me or my partners. And once that point comes, I need some predictable way to hey, I know I'm going to get 4 or 5 sales calls this this month, and I know that I'm probably going to close one of those. So here's kind of what my business is going to look like over the next 6 months to justify bringing on that person. And if I'm just doing it off referrals, I can't really plan that, because I don't know when those referrals are going to come in. They do come in because you do a good job for clients, they'll eventually come, but you just never know when. And you never know. You have no control over, is this a target? We were talking about profiles of, target clients. You have no control over whether it's going to be that person or not.
Yeah, you would hope so,
You know,
right?
You hope, but yeah, that's pretty much all you can do.
Yeah, because even with referrals, there are like, it's like your services don't fit everyone.
Right.
And so then there's that weird interaction that you have inevitably,
Right.
where you're like, someone's like, oh, please help my friend out.
Right.
And then you're like,
they really just want taxes done.
Yeah,
You don't do taxes.
this isn't a good fit.
Yeah.
They're not even ready for what we're
Right.
trying to do. Or maybe they're way advanced with what they're doing.
Right.
And they actually they need a full-time.
Right.
They probably need a couple full-time people.
Yeah.
They need to hire for this.
Right.
And it wouldn't be worth their time or money to have a third party do it or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, sweet. Well, Hunter, I think this was a great conversation.
Another episode of Elders in the Gate in the books.
Yeah, I think it was great.
Yeah.
So we'll have to do it again
next week.
Next week.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. Cool.